President and CEO of WURD. And we are really grateful to have a day where we can really do a deep dive and focus and be intentional about what we do to take care of ourselves and our communities and each other in this moment of deep, deep, deep sorrow and reflection of so much trauma and death in the wake of George Floyd's life being taken, but so many other Black people's lives being snuffed out. And so we have an amazing group of what I'm calling 3 generations of artist, activist, warrior women who I am so happy said yes to me when I reached out a few days ago about sharing this space with us today to talk about their lives, their work, and their experiences as it relates to this this moment in time. And so I want to, before I introduce each of our guests, I want to give a shout out to Taib Smith, who was kind of the brainchild. He came up with this framework of a day of healing, because I was saying, what can we do? What can we do to speak into this moment in a way that isn't just rehashing the sorrow? And he said, what about a day of healing? And so I am grateful to Taib for giving us that framework. And so right now I want to introduce my 3 generations of artist, activist, warrior women who will be with me for the next hour to talk through healing and wholeness and how we take better care of ourselves and each other. So first up is Mama Sonia. Everybody knows Sonia Sanchez. She is, and I'll just give a little bit of her bio. Sonia Sanchez is an African-American woman who has many titles such as mother, poet, professor, and lecturer on topics such as Black culture, women's rights, and racial justice. She is a sponsor for Women's International League for Peace, and I believe this is still true, a board member of Madre. Her literary work is abundant and has earned her many awards, such as the American Book Award for Homegirls and Hand Grenades and the National Endowment for the Arts. She is the author of more than 20 books. And her newest book, she has a new book out right now that's called Sonia Sanchez Collected Poems. And it's a compilation of most of her work, many of her works of poetry. She has lectured at over 500 universities and colleges in the United States and has traveled extensively reading her poetry in every continent of the world. Welcome, Sister Sonia. And we also have, we also have Ursula Rucker, who is also based in Philly. She's a Philadelphia-born poet, mother, activist, and recording artist. She's been performing, recording, and releasing works for over 20 years. She too has traveled and toured extensively throughout North America, Europe, Asia, Australia, New Zealand, and Africa, sharing her poetry, her heart, and soul. She's dedicated to art as and for social change and committed to freedom fighting, truth telling, and peace, and a little trouble, it says in parentheses, making through her chosen art form. She was also awarded both the Leeway Foundation's Art for Change and Transformation Awards, and she's just done amazing work here and throughout the country. So welcome, Sister Ursula. Yes, and our 3rd generation, she's the newbie of the group. Kai Davis is a Black queer writer, performer, and teaching artist from Philadelphia. Her work explores Blackness, queerness, womanhood, and the many ways these identities converge. In 2017, Kai received the Leeway Transformation Award for her art for social change work in Philadelphia. She's currently a co-organizer for the Philly Pigeon Poetry Slam and Retreat, poetry editor for Apiary Magazine, member of the Philadelphia Poet Laureate Committee, and the 2020 Next Fab Times Leeway Art and Technology Artist in Residence. Her work has been published in The Offing, The Shade Journal, and Mouths of Rain, among others. Welcome, Kai Davis. So I feel like we're all family. Sonia is a dear, dear family friend, very close friend to my mother and previously my father. I feel like Ursula and I have been traveling these roads as peers for a long time. Our sons are now good friends, which I just found out. I love that. And Kai, I've known Kai since she was a little girl. Her father and I and her mother are dear friends. Her father and I were dear friends, and her mother and I are still friends. And I remember her as a little girl at Germantown Friends. So this is a wonderful, wonderful kind of reunion and opportunity to have you very brilliant and powerful women speak into this moment. And so I'm just going to open it up and start with you, Sonia, to just, like there's a lot that's happening right now in commemorating. There are marches, there are vigils, there are conversations in the media about this 1 year anniversary of the killing of George Floyd. And I want to see if you could just kind of kick us off with how are you feeling today? What are some of the things that that are coming up for you in this moment? And I'll ask each of you that same question just to kind of level set our conversation. Sonia Sanchez.
Well, my dear sister, to someone my age, this is not new. This is old murders and murderings. This is old attacks on communities of color. So that's what we've seen. What we've seen is that it has been accelerated. That this country now does it under cameras, actually, and say, I didn't do anything wrong, right? And so here we are. And my question then is, how then do we begin to talk about what we really must do? How we must explain this to our people, how we must respond to it in the midst of a crisis, a health crisis in America. The killings have not stopped during this health crisis, during this crisis where people have died because of a pandemic here. So in the meantime, we have hundreds and thousands of people dying. And then, as someone said someplace to me, so what's one death in the streets of America? And I said simply, it is indeed one death amongst all of the thousands of deaths that we see, but it is a death that has continued throughout our sojourn in this place called America. And so we have to look and say simply, how then do we react to it? Some people, stayed home. Of course, we all stayed in the house. We finally got masks. We finally ventured out to shop for food. But also, we finally also went on Zoom and began to talk to people and communicate again, not just to read our poetry, but also or our stories or our short plays, but also to talk about how do you move not only in a pandemic, but how do we move in this continuous pandemic of the killings of people of color, most especially Black women and Black men. And that is not an easy question, because at some point at the same time, as someone said recently, you also see other people killing Black folks. So what's the problem? The problem is that this is a pandemic. This is the killings of Black folks, of Black men and Black women by people who are supposed to be the guardians of us in the cities, in these streets. And so therefore, it is nothing simple, it is nothing easy, it is nothing hard. It is very hard to talk about. So what I think, after someone called me, almost a year ago, and said, are you shocked? And I said, well, if you consider how long I've been here in America and seen this before, no, I'm not shocked. What I am shocked about, I guess, is always the reaction that happens in America. As some people will say, well, what were they doing outside in the first place? Why wasn't they home? What are they doing out there, on the corner selling things they shouldn't be selling? You see, that's not the point. The point is that in this place since 1619, in this place called America. We have been people who are allowed to die, who have been killed. They were killed when they were escaping from slavery. They were killed when they were enslaved. They were killed when they were trying to escape. They were killed just because a master got mad at them. They were killed because they looked differently from the rest of the people. They were killed because, okay, why not kill a nigger today? They were killed simply for the reason that here they is, okay, and they're doing bad. What are you doing out in the street, boy? It's 10 o'clock at night. What do you mean you went to the store? What do you mean you ain't doing nothing? What do you mean you're out in the streets? You must be doing something wrong. You must be doing something wrong. We're going to kill you, nigger. How do you respond to that? How do you listen to that? How do you say to your heart, especially on many levels, the educated ones? The educated ones who look up and say, Sonia, well, you all have been talking about this a long time, but you and I know that there are problems here in our communities. Yes, there are. And the problems have always been the people who are there to secure us, to protect us. So yes, many of the things that many of us have done is that one of the things that I do that helps me is that I've always been a walker. The difficulty is that the schools are closed now, so I can't walk on the field, right? I can't count my 3 miles going around, so I walk in the streets of Philadelphia the way that I used to walk in the streets of New York City after someone had killed a Black girl or a Black boy or a Black male. So I walk in the streets of Philadelphia. I walk with a mask on. I see young children, young girls, young women walking down the street without a mask, and I move over to the side, and they said, why she move over on the side? And when I got a distance, I said, because you don't have masks on. You don't love yourself, and you don't love me. You don't love your good health, and you don't love my good health. Put the mask on, cover your nose, cover your mouth, cover your tongue. Understand at some point that we are doing that not just for ourselves. I'm 85 years of age. We're doing it for you. You're young. You're the future. Cover your mouths and your noses, but don't cover your eyes, because you are to live. We want you to live. And then, sometimes they recognize your voice. Oh, Professor Sanchez. I say, yeah. I don't remember your name, but we love you. And the point that I think we should try to get out at this community, our community, is that we love you. That this radio program that you do here, every day, is because you love our community. You love the larger community. You're saying to the community at some point, we've got to talk about the deaths and dyings. But beyond that, we got to talk about how then do we put down an ultimatum that says, by this date, you've got to come up city, state, America, with how you're going to change, how you're going to stop the killings at some point. That we've got to do, constantly. But I walk a great deal. I do yoga also too. But above all, in the morning, although it's kind of hurting me because of this, what do you call it? I have,
Sciatica?
No, because of the pollen, because of the pollen count, the high pollen count, I can only stay out there for about 5 or 10 minutes. But usually I go out and I breathe. I greet the morning. We got to greet the morning with a smile instead of a slap. We got to greet the morning with a smile and words of love and respect, instead of a curse. Because when we curse the morning, we curse ourselves, we curse our neighborhoods, we curse our breath even. We allow people to hear our curses, and so therefore they say they're cursing themselves. We'll curse their kids also too. So therefore you go out and you take the deep breaths that will help you breathe during the day, that will help you move. And then walking is good. Get people to walk with you who have been vaccinated, who also wear masks. Walk and talk. But above all, when I walk by myself, with my cane now, is that I go out and I talk to the trees. Have you ever really spoken to the trees? Have you really ever said, hey, aren't you beautiful? Thank you for being on this earth and giving us breath. We need breath. Our breaths are being taken away from us, by fists, by hammers, by socks, by hands, by people in blue, so therefore we need you. We need you, trees, to give us the breath to help us breathe as we walk here. And so the walking, the yoga, and also sometimes we forget the calling of friends. You
Mm-hmm.
got to call your friends. You got to say, hey, girl, how you be? Hey, man, did you read what I just read? What I miss right now, and I tell you, all the poets that I used to call at 3 o'clock in the morning are not walking on this earth. Now, I would call people at 3 and say, you got to hear this. I just finished it. They say, Sonia, do you know it is 3:30 a.m.? I said, yeah, but you called me 2 weeks ago at 4 o'clock in the morning. So it's my turn now. You got to listen to this. And they listened to it. And they said, I just got to sit up and get a cigarette. I said, no, you don't just sit up. No cigarette, right? Get some water, whatever. And we began that communication. And you have no idea how much I miss that, because we would talk for 2 hours and get up and greet the day. We greeted the day, with a fellow traveler, someone who also writes, someone who also thinks, someone who also is here on this earth to make sure that we multiply, that we are not killed constantly. That is so I don't have that anymore. I've been talking to a couple of younger poets, and they said, you can call me at 4 o'clock. And I said, okay, right, maybe I can, but why don't you call me at 4 and wake me up, whatever, etc. But then I feel I can do that. I'm serious about this. What we did for years is that we would call each other and talk to each other and start the day together. We need to start the day with someone in the morning when you get up. If you have a family, you start the day with your family. If you have someone outside, or if your children aren't living at home with you at this particular time because they're so much older, right? You can start the day or in the night, or interrupt the night with people, with work that you do, with laughter. We have to invade, what people call these non-smiles, these journeys towards death. We have to invade these journeys towards death. Okay, death, here you is again, whatever. We're going to stop you. We're going to put a stop to you. Stop. No, don't come to my neighborhood again, okay? Whatever, we have to stop it mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and that means simply we've got to begin to speak truth to the people. We got to begin to tell people what they do when death does visit them. We got to begin to talk at some point. There's got to be central points, your radio station perhaps, but central points that call people to say, we need very much to get something going because this is happening in our community and it is killing us and we are dying instead of living. So those are many things,
That's
but
amazing, Sonia.
always, I hope that wasn't too long.
No, no, you are like on a roll. No,
Mhm.
it's amazing because everything that you were saying is, as usual, profound and relevant and speaks directly into what we're trying to create today, which is like tangible strategies to heal and to find peace. And so you just dropped a whole bunch of them. So thank you for that. And I wanna bring in Ursula. Ursula, are you there with me? Should I go to Kai? Are you good? Are you there? Okay.
Yeah, go inside because the alarm just went on at Bartram Garden where I am right now. An alarm went off.
Oh, can you talk or should I go to Kai?
But just in case it does, we'll go to Kai.
Okay. So Kai Davis, you are the youngin of this three generations. But what are some of the things that your generation are doing? What are you doing to kind of experience and to just cultivate some wellness for yourself in this moment? Like what's happening for you right now?
Well, first off, thank you for having me and thank you for including me in this panel of amazing women. I think that I've had to take a lot more intentional effort to care for both myself and the people that I love around me. So for me, I've been like, I'm making sure that I have some time to like just stand in some water or like get to the shore or just something that makes me feel like cleansed and healed. I spend a lot of time with my dog Broccoli, and also cultivating these spaces with my friends. Now that we've like all been vaccinated, to just be with each other. And sometimes there's no agenda, and that's perfectly fine. And there's also been a lot more mutual aid and crowdfunding that we've been doing together to make sure that, you know, folks in our immediate community can afford therapy or healthcare or dental work or rent. And that's been incredible, and something that I don't think that we, you know, really did as much before. We just kind of were, this moment has brought us together because we realized that we cannot rely on anybody else to take care of us but us. And we can't rely on our oppressors to be the ones to give us food and medicine and aid and housing and clothes. That's not an option. And there's been this sort of liberating effect where we've kind of taken that agency on and really started taking care of each other in a way that's been, I think, very profound, both like spiritually and in just the monetary sense. Like, you know, there are times when I'm sure that, like in the past as friends, that we were individually struggling and we didn't think that it was, you know, our community's responsibility to help us and take care of us. And now I think that that's changed, and being more open to help and healing and fellowship and all of those things that keep us alive, with, and just disregarding all of the hate and lies that come from outside of us. That's really what's been going on.
Excellent. So I'm curious, Ursula, like, how has this has been such a hard year, I think, for everyone on multiple fronts. And so I'm wondering how this year may have impacted your work. You know, like has it been fuel and fodder for your creativity, or has it been kind of paralyzing in terms of how you have channeled some of the complexity of the last year, whether it's the racial justice protests or the nonstop, you know, killings that we've experienced, or COVID? How have you been experiencing this, and how has it impacted your work?
Thank you. First of all, Sara. Thanks, Taib, for the idea. Sara, for inviting us. Thank you, Kai. Thank you, Mama Sonia. Like, I sent Kai a little thing in the chat. I was like, we're done. Mic drop. It's over. After Mama Sonia was done, we were like, we can go home now. Wow. So this question is a common one, right? But I haven't gotten tired of answering it. I like to feign that I'm tired of answering, but I'm not. It changes per the moment that you're in. So there's this long, continuous moment we've all been in. And then we have our personal, individual moments that we were already in. And then we have our own personal, individual moments that we got put in with the global moment. So it's like all these, you know, yeah, I think levels is like a multiple dynamic levels. But I will have to say that the art kicked into high gear for me. I think the art responded to what I've given it all these years, or them, all these years, and gave it back and took care of me during this time, and kept it flowing. I have not had any cease or lack in the desire to create, the ability to create, the drive to create, because it's keeping me alive. So I'm like, oh, you know, like, no, it's not, I'm breathing. You know, to make this art is breathing for me right now, because if I don't do it, yeah, then I'm gonna die in one way or another. And I'm taking some of y'all with me, because I'm not gonna be happy. So I'm cussing y'all out on the way out. You feel me? That's how it's gonna be. If I'm not happy, you know, if I'm not doing what gives me something, some kind of healing, some kind of help, some kind of refuge from all of this that we're talking about, what Mama Sonia was talking about so powerfully and beautifully, what Kai is talking about, this collective energy is something I've been nurturing and talking about all of this time. Hey, come on, you know, let's really do this, you know, collective creativity, collective help, collective healing, collective economics. Let's not just, oh, when we mention it, it's everybody loves it, but they're not really about doing it. And you know, like Mama Sonia comes from a time when that was really happening, and I want to see that happen now. Why did that stop? No, I want to do that. Now let's things come full circle. So like now the circle is all mutated and all, but it's still a circle. Because we don't know where we are or what we're doing, and we've all been forced into things we don't want to do, things we don't want to feel. I have 4 sons, so this killing of, you know, Black bodies, Black beings, and Black men, and Black boys, Black people, but I'm, you know, I'm thinking about my sons. You know, you got to worry about like, oh, there's this, you know, they can't trust. If one of them is like, oh, I want to drive up to Vermont, I'm like, who's going? Well, I mean, like, is there security? I mean, like, how are you traveling from Philly to Vermont in the car? Like, this is what we're thinking of. Like, this is what I'm really, really thinking about. Like, what's your plan? And when you're going camping, well, where? Who's there? You know, like, who's there to protect you? What's going on? And then right here in Philly, you know, we have the violence that's going on here, you know, hyper close because, yeah, for all those dynamic multi-levels, right? For the pain, for the trauma, and the reaction to the pain and the trauma. Then everybody wants to write the people who are doing harm off like they never received harm, like they haven't experienced harm, and that this whole thing is cyclical and everybody just doesn't see it or doesn't want to see it. And so like this conversation is cyclical. It started with Mama Sonia and Kai, and I'm just kind of like playing off and continuing, you know, like we must hold each other up. We must speak up. We must stand up. And I know it's a little weird right now, but you'll find ways to do it. Mm-hmm. You must find ways to do it. You have to find ways to do it, or you're just going to be relegated to a corner or closet in your house and not be able to like do anything, because that's where it's heading. And I don't know about you, but I'm not down with that.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think that, you know, you raised the fact that you're a mother of 4 sons. I'm a mother of 3 sons. Sonia, I know you're a mother of 2 sons. And that, that dynamic, that I know I struggle with, and I'm coming to you, Mama Sonia, you know, this reality that we live with that you just described, Ursula, but also the reality that you don't want to shackle your child with all of this pain and fear, because, you know, at the end of the day, they're also a fully evolved human being that should be able to walk through the world free and whole and unafraid. And so, Sonia, I want to see if you could talk a little bit. I know you have a new book of collected poems, and I want to ask you about how this time frame, since you have such context, may have impacted your work. But I also want to hear how you parent throughout all of because this is not new, as you said. It's been a struggle forever in America for Black people and Black men. And so how do you move through the world as the mother of Black sons and equip them with what they need on both sides of that equation?
Well, my dear sister, I think that one of the things we know is that Black mothers have always attempted to equip their children as they go out into the world. So this is not new. They've always understood exactly what it has meant for them. I always harken back to Margaret Walker's only novel that she did for her thesis, for her PhD thesis, where at the end of the book, her husband will come down to rescue the son that they had together, to take the son out of the South and take the son north for an education and also for life. Um, the point is that that happened many times when Blacks exited, migrated from the South and came north, supposedly for some kind of humanity and for some kind of freedom. And they found that the difference with this thing called freedom was merely that they were in these apartment buildings as opposed to on plantations and shacks. But in the coming, there were things that were different. And the differences were that they were able to move around, perhaps in a city, and not be necessarily relegated, to just your neighborhood, but they were able to be relegated or sent to schools that sometimes were, in quotes, integrated, and with white teachers, and some of them looked upon you not as someone who should not learn, but as people who could learn. So many of us got what I call in the North a good education in the high schools and colleges, and they were all free. But at the same time, too, we were relegated into the places called the Harlems of New York City. And those buildings we lived on did not necessarily have large rooms. They had an amazing bunch of rats in the walls that you could hear at night. They also had an overpopulation of people sharing rooms, in those places. And we did not have regular garbage pickup. But one of the things we did have is that we had young males who would play handball with us against the filling stations of America, who would play stickball with the girls and the boys in the streets of America, and who would become, the males would be picked up because the night before they were told that there was a fight and they had beaten up some of the white kids from some of the gangs that lived further up in Washington Heights. And so therefore we began to see as children these boys, young males who were picked up and were turned loose from the police stations and would come into our neighborhood by 12 or 12:30 a.m. in the morning, walking slowly because they had been beaten. And what I used to look at because we sat out on the stoops waiting for them to come home, is that I saw how the parents felt so helpless that they could not help their children. And when the males came in, the young males came in, I remember they pulled away from their parents and sat on the stoops across the street. And I began to look at that and try to figure out, what did that mean? And one of the things our parents told us is that we needed an education to begin to understand what was happening to us. But I also learned at some point that education also helped that stay in order. Helped it maintain us in the so-called ghettos of Harlem, right? It kept us in line. It kept us in place. It kept our parents in place. It kept us in those corner store grocery stores and the corner store liquor stores, whatever, that would give us actually credit when we came in to get our food. But what we learned that had happened to us moving north was that constant fear. Fear traveled with Black folks in those days and today. Fear is a constant traveler, I think. And one of the things our parents attempted to do was to keep that fear out of our heads, out of our tongues, out of our eyes. But their attempt did not work, because we went out into the streets of America and we saw that fear, that what was happening to our community. But our parents never talked about the fear. Our parents never talked about us being enslaved. Can you imagine? Because they didn't want us to feel that we could not move the way we needed to move. And so I found out about our enslavement in a place called the Schomburg. Can you imagine? Not in the schools of America, but in the Schomburgs of America. And I looked up, and I remember putting my head down crying. I looked up from souls of Black folk, their eyes of watching God and up from slavery, you know, and saw what people had written about us. And I learned, you know, what it was, what we had lived, because our parents did not tell us what we were living. I learned at some point that we had to do something about it. You see, my sisters and my brothers, we can't do it the same way that we've been doing it all along. That's one thing we've got to learn from this pandemic, and one thing we've got to learn from something called, what are we, 2021? You know, that the point is that we've got to move the ideas of freedom to another level. We've got to move the ideas of our neighborhoods, you know, to another level. We've got to look at each other and say to each other, now you might not want to be my brother, sister. You might like gossiping about me, whatever, but we are sisters and we are brothers. And at some point, for us to live on this earth, we've got to understand that and begin to support each other. So our communities have got to be different communities. You know, we've got to, at some point, you know, I said some years ago with some people on a panel, some very important people on the panel, we got to build our walls of respect around us. You know, no one can come in this neighborhood if you don't respect us, if you don't respect our bodies, if you don't respect our Black lives, whatever. You have to stay out. You know, if you don't like us, you stay out of our neighborhood, whatever. You know, only the people, you know, who are supporting us and supporting our lives will be in our neighborhoods. You know, that sounds really, oh, look, listen to what she's saying. No. At some point, we've got to let it be known in city council, you know, in the city of Philadelphia, in the Harlems of New York, and in New York City, in Missouri, you know, in Texas, in Georgia, whatever, that, you know, we have to announce one day in city council, do you know where most of the Black folks live? And name them. Name the type of places. Well, we say those are places of sanity. Those are the places that we're trying to raise our children in our schools, whatever. We're trying to raise our children. You do not come into our neighborhoods, you know, with guns and killings. You don't see our children as Sparta. You don't see our children as they saw in Atlanta, Black boys to be picked up and killed, you know, and buried places in the streets of Atlanta, because we are human. Just like you know, we walk upright as human beings, you see, and look at what we've done. And if you want to know what we used to do, is that we used to put up at subways, whatever we learned from the Schomburg, we used to put up on the wall. Let me tell you about Black folks. Do you know who invented this? I mean, you know, it sounds silly, but as you were, people would take it down. People would literally take it down and take it with them, you know. So you don't really want to kill us, because we might be inventing something, saving your life, saving your child's life, whatever. I mean, those were little things. But in the meantime, also, we always had a rally. I said to some people the other day, after I finished speaking on a Zoom, I said, when this pandemic has moved to a level where we can really move around, we need to have a walk all over the country. Black folks need to have a walk down to their city halls, right? A walk that says, we have survived, now we intend to survive even more. Let's take this to a different level. You know, they need to do their humming and their singing as they walk through the streets of America, saying, you know, do not, we are not the Father. You cannot kill us anymore. And if you do, we will move this to another level that says, like, as Malcolm said many years ago, you take this to the UN, because we finally would say, this is wholesale murder. You know, this is slaughter at some point, and this deserves to be listened to at the UN, not just listen to the Congress of America when they can't agree what to do, what we should do, how we should indeed punish the people who would kill a George Floyd and all the women and all the young men in America. This is not an easy task. You know, at 85, you know, I'm looking at you coming behind me, younger than I, saying, you can't do what we did. You know, but the point is that you've got to do more than we did. You got to take this issue to the UN. You got to take it to City Hall. You got to go in and have people sitting in City Hall and says, we've listened to what you said. Now we want to bring up the safety, you know, the lives of Black folks, people of color in America, in Philadelphia, all over. That has got to be coordinated in one day, all over the United States of America. Because what are they doing? They are changing the curriculum all over the Midwest, right? They are not teaching Native American literature anymore. What happened? They're not teaching any of that stuff anymore because they said it is not real history. Our sister Nicole, who did that amazing thing on 16, remember? Right, on our interest in America, they are hiring her for this in this great position, and everyone who's been hired in this position got tenure, whatever. Right. They said, no, we're not going to give you tenure. So anytime, one of the things that I did it was a big conference with Martin and some people. They had asked some people to say what we should do. I did a long thing with 12 committees that we should have in our communities. Well, one was a committee of engineering, whatever. Committee of engineering meant simply that any time one of us gets killed, there would be a long ad paid for by the Blacks who were millionaires among us, with the whole thing about what this means, the results of it, what it means for the community, what it means for America, whatever, et cetera, and at the end, concerned citizens, you see. That's what you do. We should have a committee of education. Black education should be the same in every school with the same books, whatever. You cannot allow, the Board of Education, which is really bored most of the times, if you understand the use of that word, and the Board of Education that says, no, you don't teach this literature of Black folks and Native Americans. You don't teach them what happened. When Tulsa, Oklahoma happened, when I went to a place called Tulsa, Oklahoma, when I moved to Philadelphia in 1997, to do a lecture. And, I come out and I say to the people, this is an aside, I'm a vegetarian. They had a salad for me. And I go and sit down, and across me is this old Black man. And he says, how you doing, daughter? And I said, fine, thank you, brother. He said, you sure is fiery there, girl. And I said, yes, you don't know how to answer that. You kind of nod. He said, but I bet you don't know what happened here. Whoa. And I looked up, and then he said, I said, what happened? He said, here, got a pen, write down my number. I wrote down his number. He said, when you go home and find out, call me. He would not tell me. I get home to Philadelphia the next day, and I look it up, in 1997, 1977, thank you. And my son's in 1977. And what happens, I look it up in my books in the library because they didn't have it in the libraries of Temple. And there it was, Tulsa, Oklahoma. I put my head down on the desk, and I'm glad there are other words for crying than crying. I sobbed. I could not stop from crying as I read about the death and dyings and killings of Black folks in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in 1970, that what happened before in the 1920s. And what I'm saying simply, let me just say this and I'll be finished. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
I know it's taken me a long time. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I called the brother the next day. And I said to him, my dear brother Jones, I found out what happened. It was right in my library, notes on the NAACP when they used to send people out when things happened to Black folks. And I said, I found out what happened. And he said to me, I thought we were going to have a great conversation. He said, good, daughter. I'm glad you understand, daughter. Well, goodbye. And then I began to Xerox that information and took it every place I went when I traveled. I am here to say at some point simply that, that happened so many years ago, but what is happening to us now, this not isolated killings, but these killings in every city, these killings of young people, it reminds me of the things that we did when we women came together, Black, white, green, blue, and one woman stood up and said that she was a nurse and they used to drop the Black babies on the floor in the hospital and never went and said, is he okay or is she okay? And so they are killing us to say, what are you going to do? Are you just going to mourn? Are you going to not go to work, have one day when no one goes to work, that everything stops in America, whatever, that we go out and we show up one day and we stop all traffic in America, sit down and say, until you stop this, we will continue to do this kind of non-violent protesting that needs to be done, that we will come in and invade City Hall, the council, and say, stop this talking here. The talk is death. The talk is the killings. The talk is young people dying. The talk is the death that stinks all over America. That is what you need to talk about now in the councils of America.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I know that that Ursula wants to get in, and then I want to get Kai in to talk about this. You know, how we do things differently. You are the generation that, I mean, we're all coming behind Sister Sonia's generation, and we all have our work to do. But I want to hear from you, like, how are you guys doing things differently? But first, I'm going to go to Ursula because she wanted to plus one.
I'm not going to be long. Thank you, Mama Sonia. We could all just sit here and get the lessons all day. Yes. And the poems that are in the lessons, because you know Mama Sonia speaks in poems.
Yes.
That's how it is. Mm-hmm. It's all kinds of gems in there. I wish I had a notepad. Okay. So I just want to illuminate the multi-generational thing in action, because that is what this is. And I so appreciate you getting us all together, because I believe in that. That is necessary. And I learned that from, you know, Mama Sonia and not too many others, just a few. You know that this multi-generational thing is vital. So my son started watching Lovecraft Country late. Just started, you know, a couple months ago. I said, yeah, he came to me, my 16-year-old, who's about to be 17 on Juneteenth. Yes, I had a Juneteenth baby. Yes, I did. Because I'm blackity black like that. So he was like, yeah, what do you think about Lovecraft Country? I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm not going to tell you anything, but you're going to love it, you know. I said, and there's a surprise near the end, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. Mama Sonia and y'all, my son Sage Gideon Green came into my room after he watched that particular episode and was like, Mom, the part came on, and then I heard a voice and I was like, is that my mom? And I was like, kind of. And he was like, then I was like, oh, it's Mama Sonia. It's Mama Sonia. And I said, see, I told you, weren't you excited? Wasn't that fly? Wasn't that amazing? You know, on that scene in Tulsa, let's bring it all the way. Let's start at the beginning. Let's travel. Let's travel through all the fear, being a constant traveler in our lives, which I heard that, Mama Sonia. I heard that. Let's travel all around with that fear and that trauma. And while we do what we do all the time, anyway, in the face of it, and I'm about to hit Kai up and talk about some of these ideas that Mama Sonia just gave us for what they used to do, and see if we can do that now. But yeah, this is real. Look, what I just told you, it's real, it's happening. Let's keep it going. Let's pass these batons. Let's keep it. This is what Mama Sonia and Baba Mary Baraka with the Black Arts Movement and all the movements, and starting the first Black Studies program in a place called San Francisco State University. Oh yeah, I do my homework, do yours, and do your work in general for yourself, for your people, for the planet, and all that. Kai, come through.
Yeah, go ahead, Kai. So Kai, I have a specific question for you, because I know that you mentioned that, at least in the chat, that your work too has changed a lot in this year. But I want you to, like Mama Sonia was talking about, we need to do things differently. We don't need to replicate what we need to know it, we need to understand it, but we don't need to necessarily do the same things that were done in the past to get, you know, to move us to the next level. You are that, you know, that younger generation. What are you seeing? What are you doing to create something new and to do things that are going to move us forward, but in a different way?
Wow, a lot of pressure. I think that one thing that I've been seeing a lot of with my peers is moving away from electoral politics, like completely. Realizing that, I'm not saying that there's absolutely no value in voting, especially like for local elections, it does have an impact. But I think that one thing that me and my peers are seeing is that throughout all of these elections of people that, you know, we thought that we believed in, things have only gotten worse in a lot of ways. And like Mama Sonia was saying, like accelerated in ways that, I mean, really just tell us like what the reality is that we're living in. And I think that right now, a lot of us are also seeing how the US has caused an incredible amount of death, destruction, harm, violence through the act of policing, both on US soil and abroad, in funding wars and funding genocide and committing genocide everywhere. And I think that this divestment from policing has been a really, really huge like new push, at least in my lifetime, realizing that what's more important is prevention and harm reduction and healing above any sort of reactionary process, moving away from punitive responses to harm doers in our communities, and more so focusing on trying to, my dog is jumping around. Okay. More focused on transformative justice and reformative justice, and trying to, you know, just move away from what we've seen as normal and what has been seen as a staple in our society. Like, we're like, okay, so this doesn't work. Clearly it hasn't worked since the inception of this country, and all of that needs to change, even if it means that this country doesn't exist anymore, because this country has done nothing but cause harm since the beginning of its foundation. So
can I respond to that though a little bit?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, back and forth. We can't remove us. I'm just saying, as an elder, we can't remove ourselves, you know, entirely from that political thing, because one of the reasons why 45 was pushed out was because people came out and voted, many of them for the first time, you know, to push this man, you know, away. And this is say it with love. This is not correcting you. I was just saying at some point, I just looked and remember what Basho said: don't follow in the footsteps of those who came before, seek what they sought. You know, so what you want to do is seek what is sought at this point. And so yeah, we do have to go out and register people, make sure people who were in prison, you know, that they can register and they can vote. Because what happened in Atlanta, you know, with those sisters down there, you know, in Georgia, my dear sister, was amazing. You know, now we can say, yeah, they brought those two people in and there's still estasis in the Congress. But the point is that one of the things, you know, is that while you're doing that in the Congress, whatever, you're doing other work also too at the same time that has nothing to do with the Congress. But we've got to be able to know that these people are trying to get their people elected, so therefore they can change things, you know, in such a way that it's going to be very difficult for us to do anything, you know, congressionally. All right, and so I think that at some point, you know, maybe we should kind of begin to rethink that we can't. And the reason I'm saying is that we did it. I mean, ask some of the elders. You know, there was the time people, we don't need to vote. Now that is passe, whatever. Nothing can get done, whatever. So people went Zoom, whatever. Then you looked up and you got you had idiots, people who came in who were terrible, real racists coming in, and they began to even take back the little things that people got from the brother Martin and all the brothers and sisters in the South who made sure that people were able to vote and get in and elect some of their people. So I'm just saying, my dear sister, that, at the same time, there is a duality that can happen at the same time. That is, which is really important, right?
Mm-hmm. I think what I was trying to say is really like more so the reliance on voting as a solution to a problem. I think that, there, especially amongst, I think a lot of our elders, that's the only way that they participated in activism in any way. And I think that what I'm saying is that my peers are seeing the importance of grassroots organizations, and not that any other generations weren't doing that, but but just like once, maybe it's a cyclical thing, but once again recognizing the futility of voting as a singular act, and focusing more so on bolstering people and who actually support the movements.
So what you're saying that of course we vote, but we do other things at the same time, to keep things going, because I think there's so many people have not voted, whatever, and we have people, who are in positions, where lots of Black folks live, that they're not even getting the benefits that they should be getting because they don't have the people, they have not elected the people themselves. So yeah, I see what you're saying on that level, but it's got to be, the same thing. I mean, what we were talking about is that you do all the same thing. What they were doing in the South with, with marching to vote, we had already gotten the vote, but at the same time, we got people who had been in prison who couldn't vote when they came out. So they did mix at some point, and they were important at some particular point. And you have no idea how much we love you, and I'm just saying that one of the things that might be interesting, that what we did up in New York at some point, is to bring up those same ideas amongst elders, whatever. And many of them would say, yeah, remember, we look at each other, remember we said that in 1966, whatever, and this is the result. I mean, that kind of communion, which would be fascinating. And maybe this station could do that, to have people in talking to each other, so a community could hear how people came together to talk about some of the same issues. And they're important because, there's nothing new under the sun, by the way. That's what we had to learn. We thought we were the only people, I never forget thinking we were the only people who thought something. And Queen Mother Moore got in my face and said, Sister Sonia, let me tell you that we did that, blah, 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 blah. And I said, thank you, my sister, whatever. And never think that we're being harsh, okay, or being conceited, or thinking that this is the only thought ever thought. Because one of the things that we had to learn when Sister Gwen or Sister Queen Mother Moore or some of these sisters got up, and talked to us, whatever, we listened. And what was so important, because we learned. That was the other thing.
I'm sorry to interject. Ursula has to go.
I'm on a video shoot and I'm on a time limit. Our cutoff at 10 p.m., so I got to go back to the shoot. I want to leave this little short,
poem,
little short refrain from a poem that I actually mentioned Mama Sonia in. So I can't do the whole thing because I don't have time, but just the refrain and this verse. Don't nobody care about the Black and the missing. They don't care if we here. Don't give a damn if we not. You ain't crazy. This is real. Wouldn't be surprised to see our necks back in noose knot. Tick, tock, boom. The clock is ever and always being turned back. But as Mama Sonia Sanchez says, the subtext is always black. And so even though don't nobody care about the black and the missing, they don't care if we here, don't give a damn if we not. This is crazy. And you ain't crazy, because this is real. I wouldn't be surprised to see our necks back in Noose Knots, but if me, Mama Sonia, and Kai Davis, and Sara Lomax-Reese have anything to do with it, I don't think so. Peace.
Thanks,
One love.
love you.
Hold each other up. Let's keep doing this thing out here. I love you all. Mama Sonia, I'm coming around your house. Peace.
Thank you. Peace.
Thank you, Ursula.
You.
So
Love you.
we are bye-bye. We are going to have to wrap up. We're a little overtime. I took CEO prerogative privilege to extend us a little bit, but I know that you guys have things you have to do. So we want to wrap up, but I don't want to put you on the spot, but just like Ursula just left us with a poem, I wanted to see if both of you might be able to give us some type of poem, and also if there are things that you think people should be reading, watching, listening to, people they should be following on social. I'd say that for you, Kai. to build their resilience, build their humanity, their love of self and others. Like who would you or who and what would you suggest people consume? And we're building like a syllabus of information that we're going to share with our audience after today. So 2 things. What things should people be reading, watching, listening to, following? And if you have a poem that you want to leave us with, that'll be the way we wrap up. So I'll start with you, Kai.
Yeah. So I've actually been reading the Anti-Racist Writing Workshop by Felicia Rose Chavez. And as a teaching artist, it's been really, really helpful to recenter and really understand how we can create spaces that are very different from that of the oppression of academia, that we can create spaces where we can learn and create that benefit people of color, and give voice to all of their work and their art and their words in a way that honors who they are as people. And also 2 years ago, I read Are Prisons Obsolete by Angela Davis. And that was my first time really, really interacting with the idea of police abolition, and it makes it so clear. And I definitely recommend that for anyone, because a lot of those tenets apply elsewhere besides prisons or police officers. We police ourselves so much and police each other when there could be, healing and transformation instead. So I will share a poem I wrote last year around this time. I wrote it for a short film called Casual, directed and produced by Morgan B. Powell. So I would like to share that poem. You pull the silver lining from the mushroom cloud to make thread, to make a spool, to make things okay, to make a quilt, or to pick up needlepoint to fill your hands with something besides your wet eyes. You wash past your wrists now. You walk all the way past the bank this time. It is day 47. It is day 5. It is day 1028. The distance between yourself and the world is so small. Yet no stranger has mistakenly touched you in the subway in months, and yes, that is a new thing to mourn. All you have is what you can hold, and you cannot hold anything with your hands bare and soft, or take in any breath without hesitation. What did you make today? Besides bread and excuses, besides amends from your present ugly self, besides the bed or a toothless smile into a lens? Did you see a commercial about togetherness made on an iPhone in a mansion? Did you watch it alone from your couch or with your laptop turned sideways, still alone and missing things you've never had? Do you want change so badly that you would hurt yourself to be a part of a new moment? Today, the answer is no, because the sun is shining, or you slept good enough to not wake with an old ache. Yesterday, the answer was yes, and for no other reason other than this is not normal. You break from social media to break from the news and find that you are not immune to the plague of eulogies. When they say people are dying, they mean in the hospitals and in their homes, and shot in the street, and shot at work, and unexpectedly, and without a funeral. And yes, this is a new thing to mourn too. What happens when the grief swells so thick it leaves no room to feel it? What happens when time stands so still we leave it behind? How can you write about what is forever unfinished? How do you keep loving once you become undone? Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, Kai,
Thank
thank you. Thank you. That was beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mama Sonia, will you grace us with a poem?
I don't want to hold you long, but I want to ask people to please send out prayers to Sasha Johnson, the sister in England who was shot. She worked with Black Lives Matter there, and she was shot in the head, and she's in the hospital. So would you please send out prayers over the ocean, to her as she moved, because we understand more and more that this is not easy work that people are doing, that it is dangerous work, but it is God's work, if you understand what I'm saying. It is holy work. I just do a little short one, a haiku, actually. When I was in Beijing, China, at the time, Peking, China, I was called home and talking to my children, and I told them it was Monday. And they turned to their Aunt Sarah and said, Aunt Sarah, Mommy thinks it's Monday, but it's really Sunday. And it was so difficult for me to explain that to them. And I said, well, I'll talk to you. I'll see you in another 2 weeks. And the haiku I wrote as we were going to climb the Great Wall of China was, let me wear the day well, so when it reaches you, you will enjoy it. That haiku is for your audience, my dear sister, and my dear sisters here. It is for all of us that we've got to learn how to wear our days well. So when it reaches someone else, right, they will enjoy it. I remember reading my poetry then later on at the University of Beijing, and one of the officials stood up and said, Professor Sanchez, if we here in China learn how to wear our days well, by the time you get the same day, in the United States, perhaps we will have peace. You see, always the subtext for the haiku, someone said to me jokingly, a dear friend, close friend, my God, so you're always writing haiku. I said, yes, it's the one way to also remind people of peace, because it is a peaceful form. And one of the things we must do with our poetry is that we also, every 10 years, we've got to always effect some change with how we write. If you read the book that I did, we start off, all of us, Rucker, all of us hitting America, bang, bang, your MF, whatever. But you can't do that all your life, whatever. And you go to the second book and the third book, and you begin to understand, it's not smoothing up, because peace is a dangerous word. That's why we did the peace mural here in Philadelphia. When Du Bois talked about peace, they wanted to put him in jail. Peace is a very dangerous word to say to communities, to say to anybody. So I say to all of you and to your audience, let me wear the day well, so when it reaches you, you will enjoy it. Move out on this earth always with a sense of peace, but also move out, as a person who is technical, know where the peace resides as you go out, know where you're going. I wrote a play once that those who go out at night, at 9 and 10 o'clock at night, by himself or herself will not find peace at all. That is dangerous for us to do that. So we must also take with us the intellect of peace, where we walk to, where we go to, what time we're out in the world, whatever, etc., so we can maintain peace within ourselves and in our communities also. So yes, so to your audience, move always in peace. See the peace mural here in Philadelphia, and understand that some great writers wrote haiku on that peace mural. And it was indeed a wonderful thing, from Toni Morrison to Alice Walker to our dear sister in Atlanta. Why am I blanking on her name? Our dear sister, who lived in North Carolina, right? The poet who lived who's very close to isn't that wild? Who's very close to what we call whoa, help me. She wrote. She was the first Black woman that did a speech at an inaugural. Oh, she did the poem.
Maya Angelou. Woo!
Yeah. That's that concussion, that happens with that concussion quite often. Maya Angelou, they have haiku all on that peace mural, people. And so therefore it's history and history. You should go read it and see.
Where is that mural? So we can.
The peace mural is down Broad Street, and geez. I used to know the exact address, but
Broad and South.
Huh?
Broad and South. It's somewhere like in South.
Yeah, you can call Mural Arts and they'll tell you exactly where it is, but it's all the way down in South Philadelphia near one of the big Black churches down there. And one of the things we wanted to do was to have a path that would lead to it. And people who come into the city call me doing peace walks. They go there before they continue their walk, to look and see all of the words, from Brother Martin on there, also talking about peace. Peace must be maintained for us to get and resolve and get what we need as a people. We must understand that, and as people in the United States of America and the world. So therefore we can teach it, we can walk it, we can breathe it, we can drink it, we can understand that peace is a tool for peace. Peace is a tool for people now to live on this earth, with some kind of sanctity, with some kind of love and respect. So thank you so very much for having it's a joy to see these young poets always. I lean back on my eyes and just smile and say, yeah.
They're your children. They are your artistic children. And thank you so much, Sonia, for ending us on that very profound and powerful note around peace, because you are so right that that is the work. That is the work. And it's, in a country like America, it's easy to be violent and be destructive, and that's kind of the knee-jerk reaction. But it's much harder and complicated to live and be at peace. So I want to thank you, Sister Sonia, so much for being with us. Kai Davis, an amazing young poet, activist, and Ursula Rucker, who was with us for most of the program. She had to jump off. Another amazing poet, activist, artist, and you all, as I've been saying in my writing and just in the way we've been framing this, you are beautiful, amazing warrior women, and we are grateful to have you as part of this fight and this life that we are living. So thank you all so much.
For you, my dear sister, for thinking about this and making it happen. We thank you for your intellect, and we thank you for the work to keep this program online. So I keep telling you, I'm available. We're available to do some commercials for you. Okay. All right.
I will take you up on that for sure. We're going to send somebody out to your house to record you, Sonia.
Okay. Right.
But thank you all so much. I'm Sara Lomax-Reese. I've been have had the joy of moderating, speaking into, holding space for this conversation of 3 generations of amazing artists, activists, warrior women, poets on this day of healing, acknowledging this very heavy moment, but trying to figure out how we move forward in peace and in hope and in light and in life. So I'm gonna turn things over to Andrea Lawful-Sanders. She's gonna pick up the baton, and thank you all for listening. Thank you again so much, Kai and Sonia and Ursula Rucker.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So good seeing you.